Let's start down in the dirt here before we work our way up the beanstalk to matters of greater profundity. Got a question, and I've already posted this on Twitter. Somebody wrote in to ask me. You will have been asked questions like this yourself. Also, if you've been vegan for any length of time, quote, what difference does it make whether you buy or avoid a non-vegan bread from the supermarket? If you don't buy the bread, someone else will buy it, and if not, it will end up as waste. It will go into the garbage. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think supermarket managers don't decide to lower the amount of bread they get based on a single loaf of bread you didn't buy. So his point is, what's the point? What use is it? What's the outcome? What is the meaning of refusing to buy a non-vegan loaf of bread and insisting on only buying vegan bread? And of course, by implication, what's the point of being vegan? What's the point of maintaining a vegan diet? Before I read the answer that I sent to this guy in text form, let me just say, rhetoric gets a bad name. Sophistry sounds even worse. A problem like this is in part just a problem of rhetoric. How are we going to express ourselves clearly? How are we going to prepare ourselves mentally in discussing this sort of problem, which is going to come up? The question is not illegitimate. It's a question we as vegans should be able to answer. Can you? And this guy, Gary Francione, definitely one of the most influential vegan thinkers and political leaders of the last 100 years. Gary Francione also put a lot of emphasis on this word approach. He summarizes his contribution to the history of veganism as the abolitionist approach. Well, what we're avoiding there is a more odious term like ideology, right? Or belief system. But the word approach is indeed interesting and somewhat useful, I think. How do we approach these issues? Your approach to the issue, unlike your ideology, might not exclude other approaches. You might be able to say to other vegans, well, look, that may be how you answer this question, but here's how I answer it. Here's my approach. Not necessarily a difference in the factual underpinnings of our answer, a difference in rhetoric in part, but obviously the approach, it's going to have implications, it's going to have knock-on effects for how we think and feel, how we live the rest of our lives. So a little bit more than just rhetoric, but a little bit less than ideology, a difference of approach. And I think it's fair to say at this point I have my own practiced approach to answering this kind of question. So I wrote back, if you've been a long-time viewer of this channel, this won't surprise you, I wrote back to this person, quote, you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and because this is the kind of person you want to be, or this is the kind of person you want to become. And for no other reason than that. If there's a line of cocaine on a nightclub table, I'm not going to inhale it, and I'm not going to regret that it may go to waste, in quotation marks, go to waste. Let it go into the garbage. It belongs in the garbage. It is garbage. Same with meat, same with milk, same with eggs. Quote, what difference does it make, you ask? The difference is you. The difference is what kind of person you want to be. I want to be the kind of person who never uses cocaine. Not even if it's free of charge. Not even if it goes into the garbage can. Period. End of my reply. I leave it unstated. Obviously, the point is, I want to be the kind of person who never eats meat or who never eats dairy products, even if I can in some sense get away with it, even if it's otherwise free of charge, it's being given to me for free, even if the situation is in the particular circumstances, if I don't eat it, somebody else will eat it, or if I don't eat it, somebody else will put it into a garbage can and it will quote-unquote go to waste, right? So that's an approach. There's nothing in particular here I believe or am propounding that makes me different from other vegans. But it is very, very different if you approach veganism by telling people rabbits are cute, bunnies are cute, newly hatched baby chicks are cute, baby chickens. How can you possibly tolerate the fact that we live in a world where these cute rabbits are tortured in laboratory experiments, or where these cute baby chicks are killed and ground up in factories that mass produce eggs, these terrible things. That approach, millions of people are using that approach. And I can't say it's broken. I can't say in an absolute sense it doesn't work. But of course, I can point out, and I have done on this channel in over 1,000 videos, I can point out the advantages and disadvantages. And you know, if that's your approach, is, hey, cute bunnies, cute chickens, try to do the right thing here, people. Well, what about animals that are not so cute? You know, how do you answer a question about cockroaches? And indeed, it's still a valid question. How would you answer this person's question? What is the sense? What is the meaning in refusing to buy non-vegan bread that has some kind of trace amount of non-vegan ingredient? Now, why do I make this video now? I got a series of questions from Augusto. So I'm just using his first name. I assume it's his real name. Augusto, I think, has been watching and supporting the channel for years. Sorry, if it's only been 1 year or something, it feels like a long time. I remember you. You go way back, supporting me on Patreon and watching the channel. He wrote to me on Patreon, supporting the channel. Thanks to everyone who does. Sends in $1 a month to support the creation of new content. And it was striking to me that Augusto still doesn't know this fundamental aspect of my approach. And again, I'm not going to get into it in such depth or length here, but I can also recognize my own approach. It has disadvantages as well as advantages. It's an approach, not an ideology. Augusto wrote, "Hey there, Isel. So I know you make the argument that if palm oil wasn't grown where it is, in the particular forest, particular patch of land, particular farmland, if it's not grown where it is, some other crop would be farmed there instead. However, there is still this importance in terms of diversity, biodiversity, and the survival of the orangutans. So how do you think it's okay to buy products with palm oil, given that you don't believe it's okay to buy vegan products and so on?" So look, this question, reasonable question, but it's not elicited. It's not, there's no obvious reason for this to come up when your approach to veganism is what I've just set out. My approach to veganism is do it because it's the right thing to do. The ultimate product is not a bag of bread on the shelf. It's not a patch of forest in Indonesia. The ultimate product is you. This is about what kind of person you want to be. This is aspirational. This is about outcomes and consequences you can control. Consequence being what kind of person you are. So it's reasonable he asked me this, but this is something outside of, in some ways, challenging my approach. And he's right, I don't accept this idea. I don't accept the idea that you're going to save the lives of orangutans by refusing to buy palm oil. I had a whole series of videos on that. The most recent one, Vegan Gains responded to. A lot of people watched it and responded to it, and was a new perspective for many people on that issue. Now, with all that having been set aside, the other thing I've had to live with all my life is walking the tightrope between what's abstract and what's real. And as I've said in recent videos, an abstraction necessarily has less information than something concrete. And it's very easy for people to kind of fetishize and glorify abstract and philosophical knowledge as if it's something more, something greater than real and particular experience, real facts, empirical reality in the real world. And it's not. It's something less. So people can very easily get ideologically attached to the idea that refusing to buy palm oil actually saves the lives of orangutans. Now, likewise, I don't think any vegan should be attached to the idea that just refusing to buy beef saves the lives of cows. These things are pretty parallel. So this is what I wrote back to him. I said, look, in response to my recent video dealing with palm oil and orangutans, I got one message, just one, from somebody actually working in those forests. He said the same thing I said, but even more harshly. This consumer boycott is complete bullshit. If you want to help orangutans, you have to actually help orangutans. They're dying. Either you go there and start tranquilizing, trapping, and relocating them, or else they die. And the death and destruction is very much ongoing right now. I'm asking you to move past the question of, is it okay to buy this thing in a supermarket? Beyond the vague categories of ecology and habitat conservation that we're talking about, and to contrast it to direct intervention. So just pause. If you get a ladder and climb up a tree and rescue a cat from a tree, you're saving the life of a cat, right? If you fly to Indonesia and you actually go to where the forests are being cut down and you save the life of an orangutan, you provide it with habitat somewhere, or you even relocate it to a zoo, if that's the best you can do, you save the life of an orangutan. Nothing else is actually saving the life of an orangutan. Nothing else is actually saving the life of a kitten. That's something real. And the sort of justification people engage in for these boycotts, consumer boycotts, shopping mall activism, really slacktivism, I think it's misleading and really slightly crazy to try to drape them in the flag of directly saving the lives of animals. I think it's misleading. I think it's false. But hey, it's a different approach. I do not approach veganism that way, but ultimately, veganism is a praxis in search of a philosophy. It's not a philosophy that produces the praxis. So different people can come up with different philosophies to justify and propound what it is they're doing as vegans. That's okay. We got philosophical diversity, and we got unity on matters of praxis, principle, ethics, ecology, so on and so forth. That's okay. That's a pretty strong position for veganism to be in. So I continue saying, buying a product with a palm oil-free label does nothing to help the orangutans. If you buy a bottle of oil that says kitten-free, it doesn't do anything to save the life of a kitten up a tree. It doesn't. It also doesn't do anything to harm the kitten, but it doesn't. So keep it straight, guys. There's a difference between something and nothing. The university that employed me in Cambodia had all of its doors and wooden furniture made of Indonesian wood. Those doors, made of wood, could have killed more orangutans than 1,000 bottles of palm oil. Even so, will it make a difference if I now, in Cambodia, refuse to open the door? It was literally true, by the way. I saw the doors being installed, and they all had stickers on them saying, product of Indonesia. So Augusto wrote back, and he said, he's a fan of the channel, but he didn't mince his words. He said, I will say that it's a bit hypocritical of you. It's a bit hypocritical of you to say that it doesn't matter if it's palm oil free, being that you insist on everything you eat and buy being vegan, yet here you say it doesn't have an impact. Well, how come you're so adamant about things being vegan? Because of course they have an impact. I would argue that refusing to consume things with palm oil has an impact as well in parallel with this. So you see, now we're several steps down the road. If I had started out with that approach, the first question from another viewer that was asked and that I answered, if I had answered that person by saying, oh, yes, you must piously believe that every loaf of bread you buy, invisibly and indirectly, has this kind of positive outcome, saving the lives of animals, then now I'd be trapped with that implication. But I didn't. I rejected that premise at step 1, and I'm still rejecting it here at step 10. That's not part of my approach. And that doesn't mean it's bad and evil and wrong if other people do it. Some people just base their veganism on the fact that they had a pet dog as a kid, and they think dogs are cute, and they don't want to hurt pigs and cows for the same reason they don't want to hurt dogs. Works for them. I mean, I don't think it's really philosophically or politically sophisticated, but works for them. So there's more than one approach to this kind of thing. So I wrote back and just reiterated, look, I've made many videos explaining this. Maybe you've seen some of them, and maybe you haven't. It isn't hypocritical for me to say this at all, because there are different criteria for the two statements that you're contrasting. If you believe that refusing to eat meat and dairy, being vegan, is a necessary precondition for lobbying for ethical and ecological change, that is true. They're two completely different statements. The premise of the two claims is completely different. So the contrast is between the premise that refusing to eat palm oil will save the lives of orangutans. Again, to me, this is ridiculous, as if I tell you buying this container of soy milk will save the life of a kitten that's up a tree. It doesn't. Buying the soy milk doesn't save the life of a cow. It doesn't save the life of a kitten that's up a tree. It's the right thing to do. Buy soy milk instead of cow's milk, don't get me wrong. But if you want to save the lives of kittens, you've got to get out there and climb the tree yourself. If you want to save the lives of orangutans, you or your humanitarian agency actually has to intervene, has to do that. A label on a product at the supermarket will never have those outcomes. So this is the one premise, is consumer boycott, saving animal lives. And the second premise, which is my premise, implicitly and explicitly, is simply that being vegan, refusing to eat meat and dairy, is a necessary precondition for the ethical and ecological position we want to be in pressing for political change and also cultural change, right? If you are trying to abolish slavery, can you continue owning slaves? Could you employ slaves in the abolition of slavery? That alone is a necessary precondition for taking the next steps in veganism. That already is a sufficient reason to be vegan. And already in this video, I've pointed out for you the other fundamental reason that I think I come to next, just in the next 2 sentences here of my reply. Okay? I think you'd be a hypocrite if you tried to be an ecological leader, for example, an activist in the Green Party, while eating meat. Most vegans feel the same way that I do. Nevertheless, I notice the leader of the Green Party of Canada eats meat and supports the beef and dairy industry. I also think you'd be a bad person if you used cocaine while trying to be an ecological leader, even though these things are totally unrelated. Keeping it all the way real, many of you in the audience, I think you believe that also. You don't want to elect a crackhead. You don't want to be part of a political movement led by a crackhead, even though there's no direct ethical connection between using cocaine and whatever the principles are that the Green Party may be running for office on. Okay? I am a vegan for political reasons. Those reasons are ecological, ethical, and health-related. But nevertheless, it's a political cause, and I'm vegan for political purposes. Long story short, it's a political identity. Likewise, I refuse to use cocaine because I don't want to be the kind of person who uses cocaine. However, if you want to save the lives of orangutans, or if you want to have an impact on deforestation policy in Southeast Asia, you have to actually intervene in either saving the orangutans, government policy, deforestation, habitat conservation, national parks, etc. in Southeast Asia. Okay, guys? Veganism. One solution, and then a whole lot of philosophical debate and discussion about how we should convince other people to get involved, join our movement, participate in that solution. It's one praxis with many different philosophies, many different political ideals fighting over who is going to control the future of the vegan movement. And with all due humility, recognizing its advantages and disadvantages, that, in one relatively short video, is my approach.